also just get this started. I'm recording this, so it will be available as soon as I can figure out where it ends up and how to get it somewhere. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Tarflower, for inviting me to present. Apologies in advance. This is my first Zoom, so I'm still kind of getting the hang of this, but I think I got it. So yeah, my name is Stacey Matrazzo. I am the program manager for the Florida Wildflower Foundation, and I am here to talk to you tonight about our new book, Native Plants for Florida Gardens. Here we go. If you're not familiar with our organization, please check out our website at flawildflowers.org. Our mission is to protect, connect, and expand native wildflower habitat through education, research, planting, and conservation programs. And again, on our website, we have lots of resources, lots of information, plant profiles, information on roadside plantings, our grant programs, everything you want to know about what we do and what kinds of resources we provide, you can find on our website. We are funded primarily through the sale and renewal of the state wildflower license plate. Here you see our old design. We had this for about 20 years, and we recently updated it to this design. I don't know if y'all are seeing that yellow line. I don't know where that just came from. Sorry about that. Our license plate, the state wildflower license plate, is our primary source of funding. Since 2000, we've received over $4 million in donations, and those donations support programs like this that I'm giving to you tonight. If you have the old license plate or the new one, you are eligible for membership benefits. So please contact us, let us know you have it, and we'll get you set up in our database and get you set up as a member. So I'm really happy to be here tonight to talk to you about our new book, Native Plants for Florida Gardens. I wrote this with Nancy Bissett for the Florida Wildflower Foundation. Many of you may know Nancy. She's a longtime member of the Florida Native Plant Society. She's a member of our board as well. She's also a biologist, a restoration ecologist, and the owner with her husband, Bill, of The Natives, which is a native plant nursery and consulting and design firm here in Central Florida. We wrote this book with the hope that it will encourage people to add more native plants to their landscape and give them the tools they need to do this, and to also make it easy for people to incorporate natives into their landscapes. Florida is one of our most biodiverse states. We have about 2,800 native species. That includes more ancient species and more families than any other state. But we're also one of the fastest growing states in the country. So as our natural lands succumb to increasing development to accommodate this growth, we are losing this diversity. I like to include this quote from Doug Tallamy because it is particularly relevant to us here in Florida as we deal with loss of natural lands as a result of our growth. If you're not familiar with Doug, you really should be. He's kind of a rock star in our world. He's the author of Bringing Nature Home, also his new book, Nature's Best Hope, which just came out within the last month or two. Both are excellent reads on why it is so important to plant natives in our landscapes. He really shows the science behind it and gives lots of really detailed information. We hosted him for a webinar a couple weeks ago, and you can check that out on our YouTube channel if you weren't able to join us. So he says biodiversity cannot be sustained by habitat fragments because they're too small and too isolated. This is what we are dealing with here in Florida as we, again, continue to develop our natural lands. Wildlife need these vast expanses of land, but they also need safe passage when they're going through urban areas to get from one natural land to another. And that's something that we can facilitate in our home landscapes. We can look to our urban and suburban yards or landscapes to help bridge that divide between the fragmented natural areas and provide pathways or connectors of native plants, of native resources for birds, pollinators, and other wildlife. Oops, I see someone joining us. So you don't have to have a massive landscape to do this. Even the smallest native garden can provide essential resources. We just need to look at the ways in which we can share our urban and suburban landscapes with wildlife. And we can do that simply by adding more native plants. Transitioning from these commonly used non-native ornamentals that have little ecological value and swapping them out for native ornamentals. And yes, sometimes it's hard to think of natives as being ornamentals, but we really do have a lot of plants that provide year-round interest with flowers, fruits, colorful foliage, interesting forms, things that make them stand out in the landscape, and again, still providing those natural resources. And in doing so and adding more plants, we can also start reducing the amount of lawn that we have. We mow it, we fertilize it, we herbicide it, we do all this stuff to it, and it's giving nothing back. It serves no ecological value. It's just labor intensive for no return. So let's start reducing it, getting rid of it, and replacing it with native plants. And when we do these things, when we plant native, when we invite wildlife into our landscapes, we're really raising the bar for what our landscapes can do. And this can encourage our neighbors, when they see your thriving landscape, it's alive with butterflies and bees and birds, they're gonna wanna do it too. And we're hoping that we can build upon this so that your neighbor will do it and their neighbor will do it and so on and so forth until we've created these pathways or these connectors through our urban habitat and into our natural areas. So as I mentioned, Florida is home to about 2,800 native species. These plants have all evolved with our state's unique soil and climate conditions over thousands and thousands of years. That means they've evolved adaptations that help them endure drought, salt, hurricane winds, seasonal climate fluctuations. And for these reasons, they are better suited than native species for survival in these sometimes harsh conditions. They're also better equipped to provide food and habitat for wildlife than some of these non-native species that are commonly used in landscapes. They're also feeding those pollinators that feed us. So planting natives not only is doing great for the wild world, it's also doing good for us. Planting the right native plant in your landscape, the right plant for your conditions, is going to reduce the amount of water that's required. It's definitely not going to need fertilizer, shouldn't use herbicides and pesticides because these plants have evolved here. They don't need these supplements or these protections that the non-natives seem to require. They also enrich soil. They give back those nutrients that are needed to sustain other plants as well as organisms. And of course, they beautify our landscapes. They provide that real Florida style and help create a healthy and diverse ecosystem. A good habitat is going to have a variety of plants, and so we've included a variety of plant types in our book. Wildflowers can create really nice aesthetics. They also provide nectar, pollen, they provide nesting opportunities for some insects, they provide seeds, and the insects that are attracted to them are also food for birds and other wildlife. Vines can provide vertical interest. They're great when you have a small area. If you can't, plant out, you can plant up. Grasses are good for adding texture and movement to your landscape. They also literally help support wildflowers by helping to keep them upright and supported. And then of course, trees and shrubs are really essential to a healthy, sustainable landscape. They can act as a centerpiece if planted alone, or you can plant them in groups to create a privacy screen or a buffer or hedge. They also host a variety of microhabitats and provide cover and nesting opportunities for animals as well. So in compiling the list of books, or a list of plants to include in the book, we took into consideration certainly the plants that we know are tried and true. They're easy to grow, they're easy to maintain, but we also made sure that the plants we included are readily available at nurseries that specialize in native plants. There's lots of really cool native plants out there that might work well in a home landscape, but if you can't find them, if you can't purchase them, then getting excited about them isn't exactly helpful. So we wanted to make sure that we included plants that you can find at a native nursery. If you're not familiar with the native nursery in your area, visit the Florida Association of Native Nurseries website, plantrealflorida.org. Here you can basically tell the website where you live, and it'll tell you what's nearby. You can also search for plants as well and find out which native nurseries are carrying them. If you're bold enough to start from seed, visit floridawildflowers.com and you'll see a selection of Florida native seeds available as well. So with this book, we are really just trying to take the guesswork out of going native and provide an easy to use guide for selecting, planting, and caring for native plants. One of the really cool features of the book is this quick reference key. You know, the key to a healthy, thriving landscape is really plant selection. You have to choose the plants that are naturally suited to your location's light, soil, and moisture conditions. And this is going to help ensure success and reduce your maintenance requirements. So before you select a plant, you'll want to, evaluate your site, look what the light and soil conditions are, and then you can use our quick reference guide to narrow down the plants that are best for your location. So on the left of the screen here, you see this box. That's going to appear on the upper right corner of every single plant profile, so you can quickly and easily see, if it likes full sun or part shade, if it's a dry or a moist living plant. It's also helpful for choosing bloom color. Maybe you've got lots of yellows and you want to add some white and blue flowers to your landscape, or maybe you're trying to round out the seasons with blooms. You can see when these plants are actually blooming and choose plants for the season you might be lacking in. And also we include growth habit. When you buy a plant, you're generally not buying a full-grown plant, so you need to consider the plant's potential height and give it the space it needs, height and width. So all of this is included in each of the profiles. This is just an example of what a spread looks like. Each page includes, or each entry includes, a full-color photograph. And I do want to say that 99% of the photos were donated by local photographers. Many of them were actually donated by Tarflower member Mary Kime. So thank you very much, Mary, if you're here listening tonight or in the future. We could not have put this book together without the generous donation of so many photographers. Each page also includes a narrative, so we give some information on like what habitat you'll find the plant in naturally, what wildlife it attracts, some identification details and helping you, identify this plant in the wild or in your landscape. And in some cases, if it's appropriate, we'll include information on its edibility to humans, if you can eat it, and the etymology of some of the scientific and common names. That understanding of those names can sometimes be helpful in understanding a plant's growth habit, or some of its other features are kind of hidden in those names. So we'd like to include that when there's space. At the bottom of the page, we have a pretty comprehensive list of things that you will want to know when you are trying to add this plant to your landscape. So in addition to that quick key in the corner, we give some more detailed information on the bloom season, the growth habit, exposure, and soil moisture requirements. We also include propagation information. So does it grow from seed, or can I grow it from cuttings, things like that. Information on the availability of plants. What sizes am I generally going to find this plant in? And once I bring it home, how close together or far apart do I plant it, depending on what my intention is? Excuse me. We also include care tips. So does it require pruning? Is it drought or salt tolerant? Can it be planted in mass? Things like that. What can I do with this plant? What are its best uses? And then in some cases, we'll include information on relative or related species, and also non-native or invasive varieties to be aware of. Finally, we've included a hardiness zone map, so you can figure out where in the state you are and what your hardiness zone is. Here in Central Florida, we are in zone 9B. So any plant that is suited for 9B is going to generally do well here in Central Florida. The book also includes a glossary, so if some of the botanical terms are unfamiliar, you can look them up. And we do have a Get Growing guide, a quick little guide on watering, mulching, things like that. Again, trying to make it easy for you to add these plants to your landscape and to ensure that they successfully establish so that you're going to be happy and want to do more. So that's kind of an overview on the book itself and how it's laid out, how we've designed it to make it really easy for anyone to pick up and use. Now I'm just going to cover some of my favorite species in the book. The book includes 100, so obviously I can't go into all of them tonight. So I've just picked out a few that I really think are easy, that bring me joy personally, and that are really nice to add to your landscape. All of the plants I'm talking about tonight are suitable for Zone 9B, so they're all going to be plants that you, if you live here in Central Florida, can incorporate as well. This first one here is Florida Green Eyes. This is a good one for attracting butterflies and bees. It does bloom spring and summer typically, although it can bloom year-round in South Florida. It's easy to establish. It likes dry soils, full sun. It doesn't like a lot of nutrients in the soil, so it works well in sandy conditions. It's got a really big tuberous root once it gets established, so it makes it very drought tolerant. And it's got a little bit of a secret. When the flower opens and the anthers are out, it starts to take on a little bit of a maroon color, and it will emit a very subtle chocolate scent. So some people call this the chocolate flower. We've taken that name here in my household. I have a few out in my landscape, and we are always excited to see, is it going to smell like chocolate yet? You have to get really close. It's not something you're going to smell walking by in the neighborhood, but it's really a delight to have in your landscape. This is not working now. There we go. Partridge P is a really easy plant. It's kind of a foolproof one. It's great for attracting butterflies and also long-tongued bees, which is its primary pollinator. It is the larval host for the gray hair streak, cloudless sulfur, as well as other butterflies. And it has nectar glands on the leaf stems that attract ants and flies and other insects that are then attractive to birds. So birds can feast on it. They also like the seeds. This is a member of the Fabaceae or legume bean family, so it has some nice slender pea pods, basically. It has a pretty long bloom time, spring through fall. It is a short-lived perennial or annual, but it's a prolific self-seeder, so it will regenerate itself. This is a plant that will take a mile if you give it an inch, so it's really easy to grow. It likes disturb areas. It doesn't like a lot of nutrients in the soil. It also has these really cool fern-like leaves and red stems, so it's a nice, provides interest in your landscape as well as ecological value. A nice plant for ground cover is twin flower. Again, this is a good one for bees and butterflies. It's also a host plant for the common buckeye. It blooms spring through fall. It has a really nice long bloom period, so it's really great to have in the landscape. It spreads not only by seed, but from underground runners. So it can form these dense mats, and again, making it a really good ground cover. You can mow over it, it will come back, it will flower, and it's really, really easy. It also works well in a basket or pot. If you have a wet landscape, you can consider this Narrowleave Sunflower. Another great one for bees and butterflies. Bees in particular love yellow and blue flowers. They don't really see red in their color spectrum, so yellow and blue are going to be good for attracting bees. Birds also like the seeds of this plant. This one gets really big and it does spread by underground roots, so you need to consider its height and its propensity to form clusters when you're considering it for your landscape. It's not really suitable for a small or formal garden because it can take over pretty easily. But if you have you know, a wetland buffer or a lake edge, retention pond, a wet, sunny, open area where it can just go on its own. It's a really nice plant. In nature, it does form really dense colonies. Here in Central Florida, you can see it around October, September, October out on Lake Jessup. It just is yellow for miles, and it's absolutely spectacular. Another wet-loving, showy wildflower is Scarlet Hibiscus. This one is just one of our showiest in Florida. It has blooms that are as big as the size of your palm. They attract hummingbirds, butterflies, other pollinators. It's a fairly short bloom time. It's only blooming in the summer. The blooms themselves only last for about a day, but it's a fairly profuse bloomer. So even though the flowers don't last that long, it is constantly producing flowers during its bloom season. This one likes moist to really wet landscapes. So again, you know, pond edges or wetland edges, as long as you have you know, full sun and a lot of moisture, it should do pretty fine. It gets to about 5 to 7 feet tall, so you want to give it a spot where it can really be showcased and not dwarf out other plants that you're trying to grow as well. We have a lot of native blazing stars, Liatris species. 4 of them are generally available from nurseries that specialize in native plants, and they range from dry to wet loving. All of them are late summer to fall bloomers. They are all excellent nectar plants. Excuse me, they attract butterflies, moths, bees, sometimes even hummingbirds have been seen on Liatris. And they produce seeds that birds like as well. This one is a tall plant too. It gets to up about 4 feet, but it doesn't require a lot of horizontal space. So even though it gets tall, you can consider it for a small garden because it's not going to spread horizontally. This is a plant too. A lot of non-native Liatris are sold in your big retail garden centers. So you do want to make sure that you know the origin of the plant. And of course you can do that by choosing native plant nurseries for your source. Dotted horsemint, also known as spotted bee balm, is probably the best plant to have if you want to attract some really crazy bugs. I have seen some of the most interesting looking creatures on spotted bee balm with dotted horsemint. It attracts bees, wasps, butterflies. It has a really long bloom time, so it blooms generally spring through fall, although peaking mostly in summer and fall. It's in the mint family, and it is very aromatic, but it contains thymol, or thymol, depending on your pronunciation, which is the same chemical found in thyme, the herb that you might cook with. So it does tend to smell more like thyme or oregano. But you can take the leaves and dry them and brew them into a nice tea that has a little bit of a relaxing property, as well as you know, attracting wildlife and pollinators in your landscape. This is another one too, though, that will take a mile if you give it an inch. So you want to keep an eye on it. If you don't have the room to let it spread on its own, you can cut it back before it goes to seed, and that should help keep it in check. But otherwise, it is an extremely easy plant to grow. It's very forgiving, and it's just a really attractive wildflower to put in your landscape. This one has been one of my favorites since I was a wee lass growing up in Brevard County. This was always in our landscape. We did not plant things. We just had regular turf, but of course this was volunteering itself everywhere. And you probably have it in your yard if you have a dry, sunny landscape. It is very small. I'm looking at the, I think I have the wrong key on there, I apologize. It's not 1 to 2 feet. It is actually only about 2 to 3 inches tall, but it does bloom year round. It's a great ground cover. It can form really dense mats, and it spreads by underground rhizomes. So it's just really great for using as a ground cover. You can mow this as well, and it will come back and flower really strong. It's very versatile. It's vital to small pollinators. It's also a larval host for several butterflies, including the white peacock. So a good one to have in your landscape if you have the right conditions. Moist to dry soils, full sun to partial shade. And again, I apologize that that key is not for the right species. It's for that species. This is wild pennyroyal, another member of the mint family. This one's native to scrub habitat or scrubby flatwoods, so it really does like dry, sandy soils, full sun. It's really aromatic. It's a very minty smell. You can also make a minty tea out of it too. So it's always nice to have plants in your landscape that can feed you as well as feeding wildlife too. This one blooms in late winter and spring. So it's providing resources to pollinators when a lot of other things aren't available. It can bloom year-round in warmer climates in South Florida, but it generally is a winter and spring plant. Wild Petunia, again, another good ground cover. This one gets anywhere from 6 to 18 inches tall, but you can mow it. You can keep it low, and it will continue to bloom. The flowers last only about a day, but it is another prolific bloomer, so it usually has a lot of blooms lining up, waiting to go when the first ones close up. It's great for attracting bees and butterflies. It's a larval host for the common buckeye. It's a perennial, so it's always going to be rejuvenating itself, and it's a prolific self-seeder, so you don't have to do a lot once you have it in your landscape. It also propels its seeds, so you often get seedlings further away from the parent plant than you might expect, and they make a really neat popping sound if you're lucky enough to be in your garden at the time that it's happening. It's really neat. It's like little popcorn kernels popping. We included 2 Salvia species in this book. These are also in the mint family, but they don't have any minty smell to them, but they are great for attracting butterflies and bees. The red salvia, the tropical sage, is also good for hummingbirds. They have that long tubular red flower, which hummingbirds love. Salvia coccinea, the red, blooms generally summer and fall, but here in Central Florida, it actually can bloom year-round. Salvia lyrata blooms late winter and spring generally, again, providing resources earlier in the year when a lot of other plants aren't producing those resources. Both are really easy to establish in the landscape. They also work well in pots too. Goldenrod solidago species, we generally have about 4 varieties that you can buy from native nurseries. This one, seaside goldenrod, is really the most available. Goldenrod sometimes gets a bad rap because people associate it with allergies. It blooms at the same time that ragweed does, so a lot of times people think it's the goldenrod, but it generally is the ragweed that is to blame. So if you think you're allergic, maybe give it another chance, because it is an incredible pollinator attractor. As you see here, it's just covered in bees. Bees absolutely love goldenrod. So do butterflies, and so do birds who are looking for insects, because they can always find a treat on goldenrod. This is really easy to retain in the landscape. It does spread by rhizomes, and it can make dense colonies if you let it. So if you have the space to allow it, it can put on a really nice show. Otherwise, you do want to, keep an eye on it and pull out those seedlings or try to catch it before it goes to seed, just to, keep it in a smaller confined space. Elliott's lovegrass is a really nice bunch grass. It is perennial. It's got beautiful foliage all year long, and then in the fall it puts on this really neat display of, as you see here, these prolific but tiny white seeds. Birds like them. Other invertebrates like to eat them too. The plant's also really good cover. The foliage is nice and dense and thick, so it's really nice cover for birds and small wildlife as well. It's very adaptable to moisture and light conditions, so it works well in really dry landscapes as well as very moist landscapes, and it can tolerate a good amount of shade too. So it's really easy. It spreads by seeds, but you can also divide the clumps to propagate it. Another great bunch grass is Mule Grass. As you can see here, its fall flower display is just nothing short of spectacular. And if you have the space to establish, several of these together, it is absolutely beautiful in the fall. It does have really nice foliage that's attractive all year too. So even when it's not blooming, it's a great star in your landscape. It works nice as a specimen, but works really well if you can clump it together and just provide a nice dense patch of it. It's hardy, it's drought tolerant, it self-seeds, so it's going to sustain itself in your landscape for a long time. I have a few trees and shrubs to feature. Eastern Redbud is one that really is just a great specimen tree if you have the right conditions for it. It's deciduous, so for a couple months out of the year, it doesn't have any leaves on it. Right before it leaves out, though, it puts on this just beautiful display of pink buds. The entire tree is covered in it. The flowers are dependent on long-tongued bees. That's their primary pollinator, so it does attract a lot of those. Once the leaves start coming in, caterpillars are really drawn to it, especially Io moth caterpillars, which are really neat looking. So it's cool to have this in your yard and kind of keep an eye on it throughout the year to see what is feasting on it. The seeds are eaten by birds. This is another member of the Fabaceae or legume family, so it has some nice pea pods that are also edible to us, as well as the flowers. It's a really fast-growing tree. It can tolerate brief periods of flooding, but it does really well in just nice moist habitat with full sun or even a little bit of shade as well. And I didn't mention, but we are on the southern end of the zone for redbud, so it doesn't grow much further south than where we are. Here we have Coco Plum, and we are on the northern end of that growing or hardiness zone. So it doesn't grow much further beyond Central Florida. This one is just so good to have in your yard, especially if you're trying to create a hedge or some sort of buffer, because it has really dense foliage. It's evergreen, so it's always green. It also flowers and fruits year round, so it's a big bang for your buck kind of plant. The flowers are attractive to bees. The fruit is attractive to birds and other wildlife, and us. We can eat it. It's got a nice sweetness to it. And again, it blooms and flowers at the same time year round. The fruit also varies in color. Sometimes it's red, white, or blue. So it's really just a nice ornamental plant. You can have it as a specimen, or again, plant it in mass and really create a nice hedge or buffer. Coral bean is just so unique on its own. You can see the flower form here with these lovely red tubular flowers that are attractive to hummingbirds as well as butterflies and bees. The leaves are really cool deltoid shaped, a nice kind of grayish green. The whole plant is armed with little thorns, so I always like a plant that can defend itself. So it's just a really, really neat plant on its own. It can be deciduous. It also can be evergreen, just depending on the conditions. But it is a perennial. It will stick around for a long time. It's incredibly versatile. It's drought tolerant. It's also salt tolerant. One of its native habitats is maritime forests. So it just does well in a variety of habitats. And again, just gives us a really beautiful flower. I know Brian White was here last month talking to you about Yap Holly. I'm sure you have heard lots about it. It's another great plant for bees, fruit for birds, dense foliage for cover, and as Brian probably will certainly talk to you about, the leaves are caffeinated. It's our only native plant that has caffeine. You can make a tea out of it. So another plant that's going to give back to you as well as giving to wildlife. It's evergreen, so it's always going to look great in your landscape. and it's very versatile and easy to establish. Simpsonstopper is the nice cousin to the invasive Suriname cherry, which, at least in my neighborhood, is a very common hedge plant. This one looks very much like it. It has a lot of the same characteristics, but it's not invasive. It's native. It puts, you can't see the fruit here. They're white right now, or excuse me, but they will turn nice and bright red when they are mature. The flowers are really fragrant. The leaves are fragrant too. They have kind of a citrusy or piney aroma. It's evergreen. It provides lots of coverage. It's just an excellent ornamental plant, or a good one if you want to create that hedge or buffer. I'm getting low on time, so I'm trying to speed up a little bit. I apologize for that. Slash pine. Pine is such a key element to Florida's ecology. Pines in general are vital food and habitat for every form of life: mammals, reptiles, amphibians, birds, insects. That tree, pine trees, are used by all kinds of life forms. So if you have the right habitat for it, it is just highly recommended that you plant slash pine in particular, because it is fast growing and easy to establish. It's also edible to us. I could spend a whole night talking to you about how to eat a pine tree, but we just don't have time for that. But it is a really good plant for full sun or partial shade, for dry or moist conditions. And when its leaves fall, you've got a built-in mulch source as well. Pine needles are a great mulch alternative for your landscape. And another essential plant to have is an oak tree. We have 26 native oaks in Florida. Most of them are grown commercially. This is sand live oak. This is great when you want to have a live oak, but you are limited on space or don't have the space for a big tree. This is smaller than a live oak, but has very similar leaf structure, and certainly it provides the same value ecologically as an oak tree, as a live oak. It's a larval host for several butterflies. Its acorns are an important food source for mammals and birds, especially scrub jays, if you happen to live in an area where scrub jays are present. Its leaves do drop, but it isn't evergreen, so it just drops them as it's leafing out, as many of our oaks do. And when they drop, here's another great built-in mulch source for your landscape. And finally, I want to end on saw palmetto. This is a plant that I never thought, like, why would anyone ever put this in your landscape? I see it everywhere when I go hiking, and it just looks so uninviting, but I really changed my mind now that I've learned so much about it. I actually just put 3 in my landscape a couple weeks ago. Mark Dayrup of Archibald Biological Station has done a lot of research on this plant. He calls it the most amazing plant in Florida, and I have to agree. He's documented over 300 species of animal that utilize this plant. It's extremely valuable to birds, mammals, insects. It's a great source of food and cover. It is also armed. It's another great defensive plant. The petiole, or the leaf stalk, is covered in really sharp teeth, so it can make a nice low buffer in areas that you want to keep foot traffic out of. It produces big stalks of many tiny, very fragrant flowers that you see here in the lower right-hand corner. These are a major source of nectar for our honeybees, and very important for that industry. And then, of course, it produces these black berries, too, that are a staple for the Florida black bear, if you're lucky enough to have them in your area. We can also eat them, but they don't taste very good, so I don't recommend it. But it's a slow-growing, long-lived plant. It works as an individual specimen, or again, grouped to make a low buffer. It's highly drought tolerant. It is pretty tolerant of salt winds, too, and hurricane winds. It's very sustainable and just an all-around amazing plant. All of these plants and all the others that we included, again, there's 100 species covered in this book. They really can give your landscape real Florida style. We do have a style here. It doesn't look like your formal garden, your New England style garden. It looks like Florida, but it can be ornamental, it can be beautiful, and it can also provide vital resources for wildlife and help establish those pathways, those corridors I mentioned earlier, so that wildlife can move safely, can find resources as they're moving from one natural area to another. Remember, even the smallest garden can provide food and shelter. Everyone with a patch of earth can make a significant contribution. Start small, do something, plant something native, and you will start to see the results. There are a lot of books out there on gardening and landscaping for natives or with natives. I do hope that you'll consider purchasing our book. We really feel like it's a great resource, and we put a lot of effort into really making it user-friendly. So unfortunately, thanks to COVID, we are not in our office right now, so we're not able to ship books, but we should be back up and running pretty soon. But if you got to have it before then, you can find it on Amazon, University Press. And if you're local, if you live in the Orlando area and want to support local business, Park Ave CDs in Audubon Park is selling it on their online bookshop, so you can find it there as well. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you want more information on what we do as an organization, please visit our website. You're also welcome to email us if you have questions. And now I'm going to try and find some, get to some of your questions. I'm also going to open up the mic on our hosts again, if I can. Here we go. Nope. Sorry, guys, this is a little bit new to me. Okay. Jennifer, you are unmuted. While I'm looking at this, I did see a question for you. Now, somebody wants to know how many of my highlighted plants are on your plant sale. Is that something that you are able to answer?
It's kind of going to depend on what the nursery has available. So, I mean, hopefully some of them. I know last time we definitely had Monarda, Salvia. It just kind of depends what they have in stock, and what's looking good right now. So we'll have the plant list hopefully up early next week.
All right. So yeah, look for that. Let's see, what else? Does goldenrod need to be supported? Not necessarily. If you plant it with other goldenrods, if you have a nice clump of it, they will support themselves. It does work well with bunch grasses too, but it doesn't necessarily need it. The taller ones, the seaside goldenrod that I mentioned, is going to be a little more wobbly. So if you can plant it, with a grass or with other goldenrods, it's probably better. But they're pretty resilient. Let's see. Yes, this is being recorded. Again, once I figure out where it ends up and how to manage it, I will make it available to Tarflower and also on our website or on our YouTube channel as well. Let's see, where might I find sample yard plants for laying out a healthy garden? Right now, we are working on that, on getting some up on our website. I do know the Villages chapter of the Native Plant Society has a lot of good landscape plans on their website that you can go check out. They are, I believe they're in our zone too, but they're general ideas, so it's a good place to start. And they have a few different types of landscapes, so they can probably address some of the general conditions. that your landscape would have. Let's see, I'm new to this subject. How long does it take to see blooms if I start from seed? Oh gosh, that depends on the plant. Some seeds sprout really quickly or germinate really easily. Others take a little bit longer. We do try to address that in the book for some of the species that are seed propagated, but it really does depend on the type of seed that you're dealing with. Okay, just another question or two. Local Florida plant nurseries we recommend. If you're here in Central Florida, Green Isle Gardens is a great resource. They are located in Groveland, so just west of Orlando. They have a huge supply of plants. I know they are generally supply plants to Tarflower for a lot of their plant sales. Have a great variety of wildflowers as well. So I definitely recommend checking them out. Otherwise, go on plantrealflorida.org to find nurseries in your area. There are a few others in this Central Florida area that sell native plants, but then depending on where you are in the state, you can pretty much find one just about anywhere. Let's see. I think I've got, thank you for all your nice comments too. I appreciate the comments telling me you've bought the book, you like the book. We really like to hear that and appreciate it. No, Nancy and I don't have any plans for a follow-up book yet, but we do get that question a bit lately, and I would definitely love to pursue that if the timing is right, if the opportunity presents it. But for now, we've got our hands full with this one. So thank you guys again. What is the name of our YouTube channel? Just search for Florida Wildflower Foundation or go to our website and you'll find a link to it there. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. It's just about 8 o'clock now. Jennifer, Mandy, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Stacey, so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Stacey, thank you so much for doing this. I know that it's been a struggle and everyone's trying to figure out all the different platforms so we can all stay connected and interact. And that was such a great program. And it seems like we got a pretty good turnout. I saw 56 participants at one point. So that was very exciting.
Awesome.
And everyone that's still here, we're still, stay tuned for what will happen for our July meeting. As of now, we're probably going to be doing a virtual meeting again, but we will just play it by ear as the time approaches, and we will put the recording of this video up as soon as we figure that out too.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, I will end this meeting. And again, thanks so much for having me and for all of you guys who joined. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.